Hey chess lovers and friends, welcome back to Casper Chess. Today I've put together a special collection of my favorite O'Sullivan Gambit videos for you. I noticed that many of you might have missed some of these amazing gems, so I have organized them all in one place for easy access. Stay tuned and enjoy. Now this is going to be one of your favorite Gambits against 1e4. So after pawn to e4 by white, I recommend that you start with the move knight to f6, which is called the Alekhine defense. I mean, you can also call it the Alekhine defense in English. With knight to f6, we are inviting white to play pawn to e5, and after pawn to e5, we go knight d5. When you go into the master's database and the lichess database, the top played move by far is pawn to d4 instead of pawn to c4. So here you are going to see white playing d4, and instead of waiting for him to continue pushing his pawns, we must first stop pawn to c4 in this position by playing b5. This looks like a free pawn, and to be honest with you, yes it is. Is this a dubious gambit? Let the lichess database speak for itself. As you can see, the percentage score for black in the lichess database is 55%. And this is true for the remaining variations. You can even see that most of the times it's black who wins. So after sacking this pawn on b5, the first question is, what if black takes this pawn on b5? What happens? So bishop takes on b5. Looks like white just won a free pawn. But after bishop takes b5, I recommend that you play the immediate pawn to c5, hitting on the d4 pawn. The whole idea is just to destroy white's center. In this position, there are two popular moves that are mostly played by white players, knight to f3 and d takes c5. So let's look at what happens after d takes c5 first. Immediately you see this move, it's time for you to start preparing for another game, because the game is over. There's just nothing that white can do after queen a5 check, forking the king and the bishop. In case you're still wondering what is happening here, white has lost a free piece, a free bishop. I mean, it looks like the only way to save the bishop on b5 is to play knight c3, but that fails due to knight takes on c3 attacking the queen on d1 first, which again leaves the bishop hanging, and white's response is forced here. B takes on c3 is forced. Now wait a second, you don't have to be greedy in this position and take the pawn on c3 with check, because there's bishop d2 and the rook on a1 is protected by the queen. So just be simple and get your free piece, and that's how you win a free piece in just 7 moves. Anyways, knight c3 doesn't work, so what if white tries something else? Let's say pawn to c3. What white thinks here is that if you take his free bishop, at least he's going to take your free knight with queen takes d5, thinking he has equalized the game, but forgetting that after bishop b7, the white queen is under attack, and this monster bishop right here is also eyeing the g2 pawn. White may try to play queen b3, which is the most played move in this position, after which you just take the queen and a takes b3 is forced, then bishop takes on g2 and the rook on h1 falls. So clearly knight c3 doesn't work. Maybe we can try to see something else. After queen f5 check, what if white plays something like knight to d2? I mean, with knight to d2 blocking the check, what white is thinking is that after queen takes on b5, he has pawn to c4, which forks the knight and the queen, protected by the knight on d2. Now this is where you just need to be flexible and take the pawn on c5. Again, after c takes d5, you just take the pawn on d5. I mean, this looks very funny. See how this queen moved. I mean, from f5 to b5 to c5 and d5. I mean, you don't see this happening in most of your games. So that's why knight d2 again doesn't work after queen a5 check. By the way, bishop d2 blocking the check doesn't even work in this position, because now we are just going to win the bishop on b5 for free. Okay, now before we go any further, please you guys consider subscribing to my channel so that I can be encouraged to keep on making more wonderful videos just like this one. And don't forget to hit the like button and leave your comments down below in the comment section. Not to mention that you can also check out my courses in the description down below, which are going at very affordable prices. Alright, now I want to show you a line that inspired me to make this video. Yeah, well, it is very embarrassing for me to disclose to you that I once lost to this gambit against a lower rated player. But let me just show you the game so that you can also get inspired. So in this game, I was playing white pieces. And by the way, this was a bullet match. So I started with pawn to e4 and my opponent responded with knight to f6, the Alekhine defense. I don't normally play e5, but I just wanted to give it a try. I played e5 in this position, after which my opponent played knight d5, then pawn to d4. All that I was thinking of is to gain more space. I mean, the next move which was in my mind was pawn to c4, and I also had plans to push the f pawn to f4. Here my opponent played pawn to b5, and at first sight I thought this was a mouse slip, so out of respect for my opponent I even wanted to offer him a draw. But anyways, I just took on b5 with my bishop, and then to my surprise my opponent just played pawn to c5. Now, being a tactical player as well, I noticed that my opponent wanted to trap me. I realized that he wanted to play queen f5 check and also winning my free bishop right here. And that's why in this position, I quickly played pawn to c4, defending my bishop and also attacking black's knight on d5. The idea was that now queen f5 was going to be a 1-0 move. But anyways, black just played c takes on d4. And after I took back on d4 with my queen, black played knight b4. He just wanted to give me a check on c2 with his knight, forking my king and the queen and also the rook on a1. And that's why in this position I simply played knight a3, protecting the c2 square. After which my opponent played queen f5, setting up a nasty discovery with knight c2, double check with the queen. Now I should mention to say this is not objectively the best move, but it leads to an epic trap which you are going to be interested in. Now since this was a bullet match, I quickly played bishop d2, blocking the discovery, but forgetting that black can now take on a3 with his queen. And this is what my opponent played. I looked at his rating, I saw that he was a lower rated player. I wanted to stop the game and check whether he was cheating. I mean, the only thing that was in my mind was just reporting him to leeches. Anyways, in this position, I realized that I can't even take on a3 with my b-pawn. So I played an in-between move, queen e4, also attacking his rook on a8. So he just went on to take on b2 with his queen, attacking my rook on a1. And after I played my rook b1, I thought I was clever because I was attacking two things, the queen and indirectly attacking the knight on b4 together with my bishop. And this is where my opponent messed up a little bit by playing knight c2 check. I mean, he just wanted to win the rook. But this was a 1-0 move because I also had queen takes on a8 and I ended up winning the knight on b8. Even though I went on to lose the game because I spent so much time trying to figure out how I'm going to rescue my position. I was butchered, punished, tortured, physically, mentally, and spiritually. Which is why I thought it was going to be a great idea for me to share with you this game. Was I happy after losing this game? No. Am I happy that I lost this game? Yes. Because I now have something to teach you guys so that you don't fall into the same ditch. But anyways, in this position, instead of playing knight c2 check, he should have played queen takes d5 so that my queen cannot capture his rook on a8. I mean, it will be open check. So white's response is forced, queen takes e5, and after knight d3 check, you can see that black is clearly winning. Because after king e2, knight takes on e5. And this is what black was supposed to play under normal circumstances. Anyways, let's go back. So in my game, which I'm from analyzing, after b5, bishop takes b5, c5, c4, c takes d4, queen takes d4, knight b4, and here remember that I played knight to a3 since I noticed that black wanted to give me a check on c2. So after knight a3, in my game, which I just finished analyzing, my opponent played queen f5 immediately, which was not really a good move. Here the most solid option instead of queen f5 is for black to play the immediate pawn to a6, attacking white's bishop. The thing is that after bishop f4, for example, that's when now black needs to play queen f5. Queen f5 attacks the bishop on f4 and also sets up a nasty discovery after knight c2 check. So in this position, it looks like queen e4 is forced. At least white should also attack something But after this, just play rook a7, and the rook is no longer under attack. If bishop d2 this time, just take the poor bishop on a4, and you are up a piece in this position. So this is how to correctly play this line, and you should be winning from here. Okay, so that was in the pawn to c4 line after you play c5. Now there's one counter trap which I want to show you before I show you the declined version of this gambit. The line that I'm about to show you is what most advanced players play. After e4, knight f6, e5, a natural move, knight d5, d4. Here I recommended that you play b5 always. Well, in this position you will still see advanced players taking this pawn on b5, after which you still play pawn to c5. Now, most of the advanced players already know these queen tricks. And so what you will see them doing here is playing bishop c4, counter-attacking your knight on d5. But you know what you do in this position? Just give them the knight. Take the pawn on d4 and then counter-attacking their bishop, in that if they take on d5 with their bishop, just play queen f5 check, forking the king and the bishop this time. Now, shockingly, you will see them playing knight c3. With knight to c3, white is ready to give up his knight in order to keep his bishop pair. So, well, you just take the knight on c3, and by saving this bishop, white was also planning to take on a8, after which you just take on b2, which is also a discovery on the king. Am I just making these things up in my mind? Go into the Lichess database and you will see that black has never lost in this position. Oh, that is obvious, black shouldn't lose. But here's what I'm talking about. 2500s, 2600s, 2700s, 2400s have all fallen victim of this trap. So bishop d2 is forced, after which you just play queen takes e5 with check, and after knight e2, blocking the check, you just take the poor rook on a1 and promote to a queen. White is going to be playing a queen down, which is why in this position, after bishop takes on d5, queen f5 check, knight c3, d takes c3, you won't see many advanced players taking on a8. They instead go pawn to b3, not allowing you to take with check. So in this position, I suggest that you just play the simple knight to c6, not allowing white to take your rook on a8. And from here, you should be good to go. I mean, it will be hardly easy for white to remove this pawn from the c3 square. Not to mention that you're about to develop your light squared bishop either on a6 or b7. Oh, you also have pawn to e6, which harasses white's light squared bishop, and the bishop on f8 will freely develop to the c5 square, and life goes on. We can now look at the declined version of this gambit. So again, after pawn to e4, knight f6 attacking the e4 pawn, e5, knight d5, d4, and again, we are still looking at our gambit pawn to b5. It's not always that white has to take on b5, and well, you see a number of players not taking this b5 pawn because it just looks weird. They won't take even if they don't know why they shouldn't. And before I show you how to handle this gambit when it is declined, look, when we are teaching you these gambits, we are not saying that your opponents will always accept them. The primary goal is just to have an active position. We just want to keep our opponent on his toes. So you will see most of your opponents playing knight to f3, which is the second most played move according to the Lichess database. And after this, I recommend that you just play pawn to c5 again. Now this pawn to c5 calls for white to think twice about this pawn on b5, this free pawn on b5. We are still asking white to take this pawn. And you already know what happens if bishop takes b5. Again, we play queen f5 check, winning the free bishop. So that's why bishop b5 is out of the equation, which is why in this position, you will see most of your opponents taking on c5 with their d pawn. And please note that your knight on d5 is under attack, which is why you should play pawn to e6, defending this knight. Again, bishop takes on b5 doesn't work. So here you see most of your opponents playing pawn to c4, attacking your knight and your pawn on b5. Here I just recommend that you play b takes c4, and after bishop takes c4, now your knight is attacked twice by the queen and the bishop. So you should play bishop b7, defending this piece. Believe it or not, in this position, the most played move is castle shot. After which you should play bishop takes on c5. Look at these two monster bishops, how they are working together and all pointing towards the king side. So knight c3 is what you will see most of your opponents playing. Here I just recommend that you take that poor knight on c3, and after b takes c3, queen c7, again you can clearly see that we are intending to take on f2 with check and win the bishop which is on c4. So white's move is forced, bishop b3, and after knight c6, attacking the e5 pawn twice with the queen, bishop f4 will be played, and here is where you have to change your plan by playing knight e7. The idea is very simple. Here you just want to play knight g6, attacking white's dark squared bishop, and the next move here you are planning to castle short. Look at how beautifully placed your bishops are. Can you lose this game? I don't know. So in this position, clearly black is better, without any doubts. After pawn to c5, we just looked at what happens after d takes c5. But here you are going to see most positional players playing the move pawn to c3. Well, here just be simple and take this d4 pawn with your c pawn. And after c takes d4, still holding on to their center, just go bishop b7. And again, if bishop takes on b5, this is not a free pawn. This is not a free pawn. So if bishop takes on b5, you have queen f5 check. So white's logical move here is bishop d3, after which I recommend that you just play the simple pawn to e6, holding on to your position, castle short s6. This pawn, which we pushed on move number 3, will turn out to be a monster pawn. So position is equal, if not best for black, and I'm going to have a good game from here. Alright. A few weeks ago, I released this video which went viral on the Ali Hines defense, and if at all you haven't watched it already, you can find the link in the card above or in the description down below, and be sure to subscribe to my channel so that I can be encouraged to keep on making more wonderful content just like this one. Hence, my task in this video is very simple, just to challenge some random chess players on lichess in order to see if the tricks that I showed you in the last video can still work against some really strong players. Spoiler alert, some 2400s ahead, so you need to stay tuned. Okay, let's go. Oh, I'm playing against a 22-34 rated player, so e4, knight f6, the Ali Hines defense. Now, if at all you guys didn't watch the video that I made on the Ali Hines defense, I suggest that you watch it. The link is in the card above. So knight d5, that's the way to go. Plan is to go pawn to b5 next. Okay, we go b5. So if white takes, pawn to c5 is coming. Okay, bishop takes b5, so we go c5. The plan is to go queen a5 check, plus winning the bishop, the light squared bishop. So normally white takes on c5, which they shouldn't. Oh, pawn to c4. Okay, attacking my knight. So let me just take on d4. Idea is to still go queen a5 check. I mean, if pawn takes knight, I have queen a5 check, and white cannot defend on c3 with his knight because I'm just gonna capture with my pawn. Oh, now this is interesting. So what did we learn here? Knight b4 is the way to go, intending to go on c2 next. Yep, I think let's do that. Simply knight b4. Yes. So knight b4, the idea is to go on c2, forking the king, the rook, and the queen. That would be nice. Bishop b7 is also coming. Oh, can I go queen a5? Because that's the right continuation. Idea is to go knight c2, check. The queen cannot defend, cannot take my knight. I also have intentions of going pawn to e6. So if I go queen a5, knight c2 check, or let me just play e6. Okay, with e6 I still have an option of going queen a5. The pawn on a3 is pinned to the rook on a1, so white has to be careful. If pawn takes, I'll take the rook. And I also have ideas of going knight c2 check plus winning the rook on a1. Knight c2 will be check. Life is good for me. I don't know about my opponent. Okay, let's see what my opponent is going to do. At west I have bishop b7 eyeing the rook on h1, and s6 is also coming because, oh, knight d2, I have s6, still pawn takes, my knight doesn't work after s6. Okay, pawn to s6. Now white's light squared bishop is trapped, it has nowhere to go to. And if pawn takes my knight, the rook falls. Wow. That's amazing. I think white is losing now. I have too many threats. Taking on b4, taking on c1 with check, taking on b5. So many free things to take in this world. Now this is just a random chess player on Lichess. I don't even know him. He's not a paid actor. And oh, he just resigned. Oh, sorry dear. I just needed to beat you. I just needed to disappoint you. Anyways, let's do some quick analysis here. Let's just say white made a random move from here, knight f3 instead of knight e2. Here I would have just captured on b5 first, and after pawn takes I go knight s6 first, so that I do not hang my bishop on c8. Anyways, so before I play another game, please you guys consider subscribing to my channel so that I can be encouraged to keep on making more wonderful content just like this one and just for you guys. And please don't forget to leave your comments down below in the comment section, hit the like button, share this video, and remember to check out the link for my new website in the description down below, where you can purchase all my courses at very affordable prices. Okay. Oh, we have a game. So I'm playing against a 2430 rated chess player. Is this trick going to work? Okay, let's go pawn to b5 again. Is he going to take? Okay, now we go c5. Queen f5 is the idea again, winning the bishop, the light squared bishop. Most of the players here just play pawn to c4. Let's see what he's going to do. D takes c5. Queen f5 check, winning the bishop. If knight c3, we'll just take the knight. Oh, pawn to c3, we take the bishop. Yes, because I have bishop b7 if queen takes on d5. Wow. Now white is losing his g2 pawn and the rook on h1 and everything that he has in this world. Okay, so the queen is under attack. White should do something about that. So you can see that these tricks also work against higher rated chess players. And I have so many nasty ideas, such as pawn to e6, bishop takes on c5, and bishop takes on g2. Wow. So we take on g2. Yep. Take on g2 first. Queen f1 check is also coming. And I'll take the rook. Oh wow. So f4, queen f1 check. Next we take the rook. And then we'll take the knight. Oh, okay, knight e2. So I play knight c6, attacking the queen. Next idea is to play pawn to g6 and maybe bishop g7 or bishop h6. So can I play pawn to g6? So from here I just need to start exchanging pieces and not clothes. Oh, I meant to say pawns, not clothes. Why is my mind so dirty at times? Oh, my queen is under attack, so queen g2. Next, I'll just give white a check. Bishop g7 is also coming. Maybe pawn to h5 later on. Wow, so many ideas. And this is how you guys should be thinking when you're playing chess. So let me give him a check. So queen d5 check. Wow. Now my bishop is under attack, so I go bishop f3. Okay, now we go queen c4. Queen c4 attacking the dark squared bishop. Yes. I also have ideas of playing knight b4 check. Yeah, now I can go knight b4 check. Knight b4 check will also win the queen on e1. Wow. Okay, I'm intending to win the queen, and this is a 2400 rated chess player, you guys. So surely these tricks do work. So we gave him a check on d3. Oh, I don't have to capture his queen because he's gonna take my queen with his knight. So let's take the bishop. Wow. White is under pressure, so let's exchange queens. I take the queen, right? So the reduction theory is attacking my bishop. Let's take the pawn on e5, indirectly defending my bishop. Anyways, I think let me go bishop h6 instead of g7 or e6. Idea is just to exchange as many pieces as I can, to trade off pieces, cast short. What is white going to do? Okay, now let's take the knight, because the more pieces I exchange, the more chances I have to win the game. And that's what you guys are supposed to be doing. Just exchange as many pieces as you can. So idea is to take on b4, and then if king takes, I go knight d3 check. Oh wow. Pawn to b5, we go pawn to f5. Okay, so that's knight c3, attacking the rook and the pawn. Rook d1, we take the pawn, and next we exchange knights. I think knight e4, yes. Whoa, now rook takes is a blunder because I have rook fc8 check and winning the knight on c3. Wow, now white should resign here because I have the other rook there. Oh, bishop can pin the rook. Wow. Okay, so white just resigned. I think out of respect. He should have resigned a long time ago, but anyways. Now, one of the questions I get from my dear subscribers is that why is my online rating so low? Well, I use this account specifically for discovering new tricks and gambits for the purpose of creating good content for you guys. I do have a separate account which I use for serious games, but if you guys want to check out my courses, the link for my website is in the description down below. You can check out my courses and purchase them at very affordable prices. So let's just do some quick analysis here. Pawn to c4 is also playable, but there we have knight b6, and then if pawn to d4 we have d6. I mean, it's not just about the tricks, you guys. At the end of the day, we still have to play chess, right? We'll take on e5, and please note that after pawn takes on e5, white shouldn't take using the d pawn, otherwise we'll take the queen. So white should take with the f pawn, and then we'll play something like knight c6, putting more pressure on the d4 pawn and gain some initiative. For example, knight c6, and then white should play something like bishop to e3, bishop e3, defending the d4 pawn, after which we develop our light squared bishop, and then we play pawn to e6. Next we develop our dark squared bishop and castle short. But you can check the Lee chess database and you're going to agree with me that pawn to d4 is by far the most played move after knight d5. So you should be good to go with this trick, and make sure to play it correctly. Hey guys, welcome to Casper Chess. Today I have something so special for you guys. I'm talking about a new system to play against the Queen's Pawn game. So last year I remember showing you something in the lines of the O'Sullivan Gambit where you may confuse every d4 player like this, e.g. after d4, you simply start with the Polish defense. By the way, for most of you guys who are looking for a simple weapon against d4, especially in classical tournaments, try the Polish defense. But this is not what this video is all about. I just want to lay a foundation before I show you one exciting system to use against d4. So usually white players tend to go back to e4, as you can see in the master's database, which is one beauty. And it's in this position where you can play knight f6, saying take my flank pawn and I'm gonna take your important central pawn. So by this time, most of your opponents will play e5, attacking your knight, after which you go knight d5. And what you're doing here is indirectly sacrificing your b pawn, which they are going to take. By the way, bishop takes b5 is the top played move. And without even realizing it, it turns out all of a sudden you are playing the Alekhine defense or Sullivan Gambit, where we go pawn to c5 in this position. And the idea is, if pawn takes, now you go queen a5 check, and there's nothing that white can do about this. You're going to win a free piece on the next move, either the bishop or the knight. For example, if they play knight c3, you can simply take that knight while attacking the queen, and after they take back, well, that's when you take back the bishop. Again, this is not what this video is all about. I'm just trying to lay a foundation. And speaking of this position where you play knight d5, if at all any of you guys are doubting that this is the Alekhine defense, well, it's like white started with pawn to e4, and then we played knight f6, attacking the pawn, and then they played e5, then we go knight d5, and after pawn to d4, it's like this is when we played b5, sacrificing our pawn, so that after bishop takes, this is when we played pawn to c5. So same transposition, we're just talking of the same thing. And this is the first method you may use to confuse your d4 opponents. But you know, this is too risky and mostly suitable for attacking players like myself. I mean, people like me who don't mind losing quickly. So in today's video, there is this new system that I want to teach you guys, where white begins with d4 and then you start with pawn to d5. By the way, if white doesn't play pawn to c4 on the second move, the move I recommend is pawn to c5 against any of these highlighted moves. In other words, if white doesn't play the queen's gambit, you play the reverse queen's gambit yourself. That will be great. But the moment they play pawn to c4, what I recommend you do, whether in blitz, rapid, or in serious classical chess, is to take on c4. You accept the gambit as though you want to play the queen's gambit, right? And this is when most people will be prompted to play pawn to e4, you know, just taking up the center, because next they want to recapture on c4 with their bishop. And this is when you play knight f6, ladies and gentlemen, attacking the central pawn. The top played move in the master's database is pawn to e5 in this position, after which you go knight d5. See what you're doing? You are simply trying to change the structure of the queen's pawn game, confusing a d4 player. This is something that most of them have never seen before. So look at this. The top played move here is bishop takes c4, both in the master's database and in the Lichess database. So let's go with that. Bishop takes c4, which also attacks our knight, right? You have an option to go knight b6 if you want, but the move I recommend here is to go bishop f5. And see, this is no longer the queen's gambit accepted. If you ask any top coach, this is the central variation Alekhine system against d4. That's the difference. Your simple plan will be to go pawn to e6, develop your dark squared bishop on e7 or on b4, depending on the situation. You go knight c6 or even pawn to c6 if you want, then knight d7 and then castle short. Simple stuff. Then you continue playing chess. Now look at this. In this position, the top played move is knight c3. Once you see this move, knight c3, you don't want to take. Very important to remember, because if you do so, you may run into this tactic. Pop queen b3, targeting your b7 pawn and your f7 pawn. I'm not saying this is the best move, but just keep in mind that in some variations, white has this move, queen b3. So whenever you see knight c3, the move you want to play is knight b4. And next you are going to give a check, making white lose his right to castle just like that. there is no clean defense for white in this position. They have to find this theoretical move, pawn to e6, which is hard for a human opponent to see. Pawn to e6. But even after this move, you can just, take back. That's all. And see how impossible this variation is, you guys. Again, white has to find this stockfish move, pawn to g4. I mean, who plays like this in the queen's pawn game? So you're not going to see these things happening. Okay, let's just say white plays pawn to g4. Again, you can just go bishop c2 here, attacking the queen. Say queen e2 is played. Well, now you are just going to take the pawn on d4. This won't be a normal game, but one full of tactics. If a3, you can just, play bishop c2 and knight c2 check next. Again, after knight c3, I recommend going knight b4. This time queen b3 doesn't even work because you can simply play pawn to e6, defending your knight, and they are not going to be able to capture the b7 pawn. If they play pawn to a3, worse off, their queen will be trapped, just like that. For example, you can just go bishop c2 and that's it. So that's why you need to play knight b4 instead of taking the knight on c3. Again, after knight c3, I recommend going knight b4, and this time let's say white plays the top played move queen a4 check. After this, you can simply go knight ac8, supporting your other knight on b4. White will play pawn to d5, thinking they are going to win some material here, but this is worse. First of all, there is this move knight c2 check, which you can play. That's fine, you're going to win a rook. But the move I recommend here after pawn to d5 is this tactical move, pawn to a6. The thing is, if white takes your knight, planning to take the second knight, now this is when you go knight c2 check, and Stockfish says the best that white can do here is to give up his queen, which is better. But if they play something like king e2, the top played move in the Lichess database, this is when you play pawn to b5 with tempo. They can't take with ampersand. So if they do this, for example, you can simply take back. That's just a free piece, and you're also attacking the queen. Worse off, the queen is almost trapped. If queen takes b5, you can simply go knight d4 check and win that queen. Anyways, if white tries to play this desperado move, bishop takes f7 check, you simply take, that's no problem. If they rescue their queen like this, queen b3 check, you don't want to block with the bishop because they are going to take your knight. So you play pawn to e6, blocking the check, and then you are threatening to mate in one. For example, if they play knight f3 in this position, you can simply go queen d3 checkmate. All these highlighted squares are covered by your pieces. And instead of knight f3, let's say white plays bishop e3. Again, you can just go queen d3 check, and it's just a matter of time before you checkmate your opponent. Maybe you can even play something like bishop g4 here, bishop g4 check, sacrificing your bishop, because if they take, you have all sorts of moves, but I like pawn to h5. If king f3, this is when you go knight d4 check. So let's say white plays king g3. Now you go queen g6 check, and on the next move you're going to mate your opponent probably like this. So you have two options, either to go knight b6 or play my favorite tactical move knight b4, intending to give a check. Don't take the knight on c3. Don't ever do that in this particular system. So you can also go knight b6 if you want, and then if they play queen b3, you simply go pawn to e6 and begin playing your ally high in defense. By the way, they can't even play queen b3 due to, queen takes d4 in the near future after playing pawn to e6. And before I show you some more and more interesting stuff, allow me to thank all of my patrons and all of you guys who purchased my new E5 defense course, which is now complete, obviously, which teaches you how to beat the Scotch, the Italian game, the Bishop's opening, the Vienna game, and other minor openings under E4. So we just finished looking at this knight c3 line. Let's look at something else. Instead of knight c3, what if white plays the immediate queen b3 in this position? Let's look at this. Well, this is a bit tricky, but the pawn you want to save is the f7 pawn. Losing the b7 pawn won't be much of a stretch. Besides, look at the Masters database, you guys. You will see many victories in this position for black. So just think of saving your f7 pawn. Start with pawn to c6, and after they take, you take back. If they take your pawn on b7 first before taking your knight, this is even worse because you can try to trap their queen like this. Pop. while attacking the light squared bishop. See how good this is. And again, white has to find this computer move, pawn to e6. Otherwise, if white plays something like bishop b3, you simply have bishop c8 and the queen is trapped. So in other words, we may refer to the b7 pawn as a poisoned pawn. So white must not take on b7 first. They just have to start with bishop takes d5 and then allowing you to take back like this. If white takes, you're going to take back like this. And it looks like they are going to walk away with a free pawn after capturing on b7, also attacking your rook, right? The only move you just don't want to play is knight d7 because you're going to lose your pawn. But the simplest you can do here is going for a queen exchange like this. Queen c8, they can't take your rook because they are going to lose everything. So after queen takes c8, this is when you take back with your light squared bishop. Say after knight c3, you simply go pawn to e6. Your development is very fast. They may play f4, but you can simply go knight c6 in this position, attacking the d4 pawn. After knight f3, defending their pawn. You can even play something like bishop a6. Say king f2. All this is theory, guys, and it has been played at the top level. You can check in the master's database. One interesting game is where black played king d7 in this position, and after rook d1 was played, black played bishop e7 connecting the rooks. And yes, it looks like white is up a pawn for the time being, but look at how open our queen side is, as if we are playing the Benko Gambit. And this is why Stockfish gives an equal position here. White is not winning, neither are you losing. Anyways, in fact, there is another line where they take on d5 and then you take back, and after queen takes b7, instead of going queen c8 to oversimplify everything and continue playing the Benko, especially in rapid and blitz, you may also try the following line starting with pawn to e6. Yes, sacrificing your rook like this, and then go queen b6, caging white's queen like this. There's no escaping, by the way. And so if they play something like knight c3, for example, maybe intending to go knight a4 or whatever, this is when you can go bishop b4, pinning that knight. And say after pawn to a3, well, you simply take with check, and after pawn takes, here you can simply castle short. And if they go rook b1, you're just gonna take. So you're just one move away from winning white's queen. Maybe rook a2 is a nice try. They're going to play rook b2, right? But even here, the best you can do is just to go queen b1 and you're doing fine, right? Once again, if you just want to play standard chess, you can continue with the Alekhine, go knight b6, bishop a5, pawn to e6, and play a balanced game. That's up to you. Last line before I end this video. So after c4, the trick is to start with the queen's gambit accepted, waiting for pawn to e4 to come, so that you can now transpose the game into the Alekhine with knight f6, inviting pawn to e5, which most of your opponents will play. And then you go knight d5. By the way, I'm not just making up these stuff, you guys. Check the master's database. Masters do play these things. So you go knight d5. And then after bishop takes, you simply go bishop a5. Question: what do you do if white doesn't play knight c3, which we already looked at, or queen b3, which we also looked at? What if they play a traditional move, knight f3? Well, simple answer, you just continue playing your normal Alekhine with pawn to e6. Your bishop is already out. This time, if they even play something like queen b3, you know, targeting the b7 pawn, if you want to avoid tactics, you can just go knight b6. Next, you will play something like bishop e7 and castle short. Pawn to d5 is ridiculous. You can just take the bishop. But if you want to try out something fun, after queen b3, instead of going knight b6, again you can go into tactics with the move knight c6 here, offering white to take your pawn. For example, after queen takes b7, you now go knight db4, and white's queen is almost trapped once again. White has to find this Stockfish move, the only accurate move, bishop b5. Otherwise, moves like knight a3 in an effort to stop knight c2 check runs into rook b8. Now in my next video, I'm going to show you other responses by white, like what happens if they don't play pawn to e4. For example, after accepting the queen's gambit, what do you do if they play pawn to e3? Can you still play the knight f6 Alekhine system? What next? So that will be a study for another day, and that's why you have all the reasons to subscribe to this channel and hit the bell notification icon so that you don't miss any of my future uploads. Right, welcome back you guys, Casper here. Now there's one tricky opening that you can play against the queen's pawn game, and if you play this correctly, you will be winning most of your games in less than 15 moves. So your opponent starts with pawn to d4. The move that I recommend is pawn to b5, but hold on, this won't be the normal Polish defense that you guys already know. It will be something else. One benefit of playing pawn to b5 is that at least you are guaranteed white is going to play pawn to e4 on the second move. Check for yourselves in the Masters database and also in the Lichess database. By the way, you can see pawn to e4 is by far the top played move. So let's see what people play on Lichess. After pawn to e4, the main line of the Polish defense is to go bishop b7 in this position, betting white to take your flank pawn so that you can take their important central pawn. But in this position, the move I want you to surprise your opponents with is knight f6. So you attack the e4 pawn with your knight and not with your bishop. Because, I mean, bishop b7 is just too predictable. This is what everyone is expecting to see. Now, there's no point for white to take the b5 pawn at this point, allowing you to recapture on e4 with a knight. That's why you see the top played move in the Lichess database is pawn to e5. Once you see this, I recommend that you simply go knight d5. Say, what's the deal? Well, here we are just simply sacrificing the b5 pawn so that next we could go pawn to c5, gambiting the second pawn. And what we did here, ladies and gentlemen, is to transpose the game back to the O'Sullivan gambit, which most of your opponents won't be familiar with. If d takes c4, you're simply winning a free piece after queen f5 check. The bishop is dead. E.g., if white plays knight c3, the top played move, now you go knight takes c3 and say pawn takes, you simply grab that free bishop. Going back a few moves, after playing queen f5 check, white might also try this other move, pawn to c3, saying take my bishop and I will take your poor knight. Well, this is even worse because after this and queen takes, you simply have bishop b7 and there's nothing that is going to stop you from capturing that poor rook on h1. Besides, you are attacking the queen, and I've seen a lot of people, by the way, playing knight a3. Well, take heart, just play queen s6, still defending your last card bishop, and say white plays bishop c4. Well, you can just end up oversimplifying the game like this, and next you are going to grab that free piece. So in short, this is the reasoning behind the move knight f6, just to force white to advance pawn to e5 so that we can transpose the game back to the O'Sullivan gambit. And you know what happens after bishop takes? You simply go pawn to c5, and if pawn takes, you go queen f5 check. If you want to know many lines in the O'Sullivan gambit, simply watch the video that has popped up in the card above and you will regret. And you will thank me later. Anyway, the other challenging line after pawn to c5 is where black does not take. So they play the move bishop c4. In fact, bishop c4 is the top played move in the Lichess database, as you can see with your nose. With your eyes. So most of your opponents are going, what am I doing today? These are consequences of making content before eating. Anyway, after bishop c4, once again, you just ignore the attack on your knight. You capture the d4 pawn. This is the main line in the O'Sullivan gambit. And after bishop takes knight, which appeared to be free, now you go queen f5 check once again to win back that piece. For example, if bishop d2, you just play queen takes d5. But there is this tricky line that you guys should always be aware of. Knight c3. So in this position, if you just go ahead and grab that bishop, you're going to lose your queen. So the move to play in this position is knight c6, and maybe someday you're going to take the knight on c3 or the pawn on e5. Just be on the low, but hey, you can still go pawn takes if you want, but this is a risky line and you need to know one or two things. In this position, white doesn't really need to take on c3. All they have to do is to play pawn to b4 and you're dead, after which you are forced to play queen c7, and then they take your free rook and then you start limping. So to solve this, the best I can recommend is to go knight c6, because you're still attacking the knight. So if white plays bishop takes c6, the top played move, thinking they are getting rid of your knight before, rescuing their knight, well, this is when you can go pawn takes. So what's the difference? Well, this time, if white plays pawn to b4, you simply have queen takes e5 check, and maybe on the next move, you will end up getting back your pieces with tempo. Even if knight takes happens, you can just play bishop f5, and continue developing normally, you have a bishop pair and you haven't lost any material. After you play knight c6, say white doesn't take. Sometimes you will see them playing moves like bishop f3 in this position. But as long as your knight is on c6, I mean, you are more than free to take, just messing up your opponent's pawn structure. And if this, of course, you can do a number of things that you want. My favorite is to go bishop s6 for some reason, because I know one of these pawns is already dead. The only reason why most black players prefer taking on c3 in this position rather than developing the knight is that many white players don't seem to be aware of one nasty trap that exists in this position. For example, after pawn takes, if white doesn't find pawn to b4, this stockfish move, and let's say they just take your free rook on a8, go c takes b2, discover a check, and after bishop d2 by white, this is when they take on e5 with check. Once again, if knight e2 or queen e2, there's b takes a1, you know, promoting into a queen, and then you end up winning the game. This is the only reason why most black players prefer taking the knight on c3 in this particular position. But because of this move, pawn to b4, you need to be very careful. I remember covering this line in one of my old videos. Nevertheless, if this happens, the best you can do is just to go queen c7, and after white captures your free rook, you don't take on e5 right away, because queen takes e5 doesn't have a great follow-up. The move you can rely on here is pawn to e6, attacking this and also keeping an eye on the e5 pawn. And if white plays the top played move knight f3, intending to castle short, this is when you can delay them with a move bishop s6. This is okay. And you see, even though this is completely losing according to Stockfish, you never know. Most of your opponents will end up blundering, trust me. Now, of course, before I end this video, let me play one game to try out the O'Sullivan Gambit and see how it's going to go. Hopefully, my opponent will play d4 and then I'll play pawn to b5. By the way, even after pawn to e4, you can still begin with the Ale Hines defense, forcing white to play pawn to e5, after which you go knight d5. And should they play pawn to d4, this is when you go pawn to b5, sacrificing your pawn, and after bishop takes, that's when you go pawn to c5, waiting for them to blunder so that you can go queen a5 check and win that bishop. This is the same thing. So let me play one game on Lee Chess against a random chess player. Hope things will go well. Stay tuned. Alright, so we have a game. Hope to see e4. If pawn to d4, I can still take him back to the Ale Hines trap. Anyway, it's knight to f6. If e5, I have knight d5. Now the most played move here is d4. Not c4, but I have b5. That's the gambit, you guys. It's called the O'Sullivan Gambit. I'm preparing to go pawn to c5 next if bishop takes b5. Okay, so that's a gambit, you guys. Let's see what white is going to do. Okay, bishop takes now c5. The plan is to go queen a5 check and win the light squared bishop, since my knight on d4 is covering the c3 square. So bishop c4 attacking my knight. I guess I still have to take, I still need to take on d4 with my c pawn, right? Yep. So if bishop takes, I'll go queen a5 check and win the light squared bishop. Yep. Now queen a5, Kaspar's signature move. So white has to attend to this check, letting me win his light squared bishop. I mean, he just captured my free knight, except there's no such a thing as a free lunch in this economic nation of eyeballs and antennas and elbows. Okay, pawn to c3, pawn to c3. Okay, let's take the bishop, eyeballing the g2 pawn. Okay, knight to f3. Can I go bishop s6, or maybe bishop b7, or maybe I go queen d4, sorry, queen e4, check. I think I can remember something here. It's been long, you guys. It's normal to forget some of these cheap traps. So I have queen a6, but that will only be played. That will only be played after I play queen e4 check. But queen e4 check again will lead to a line where we exchange queens. I guess that's the only way to go. Yep, queen e4 check. Okay, so if queen e2, I'll simply take that queen. I don't mind playing without queens in this gambit. Why? Because I'm the one who's playing a gambit, okay? And yeah, queen takes, check, and after king takes, I'll take the c3 pawn, and I have some more open lines. Normally, when we are playing gambits, you guys, we don't want to exchange queens very fast, but in this line, I guess I'm free to do that because I have many open lines. Knight c6 first. I have pawn to e6, bishop c5 coming next. So that queen trade was okay. Besides, we have equal number of pawns. Knight d4 leaves the e5 pawn hanging, I guess. Yep. White shouldn't have played that move. Okay, pawn to b3. I guess I have rook c8 attacking the knight on c3. Yep. Let's see what white is going to do here. Okay, bishop b2. I still have knight to d3. But, I mean, knight to d3 supported by my bishop on s6. Let me go pawn to e6, I think, yeah. Preparing to go bishop c5, pinning the knight to the king. If pawn to f4, I have knight d3 attacking the dark squared bishop. So I'm not worried about that. And I also have f5, f4. Oh, rook ac1. Can I go bishop c5 here? Or knight d3, I think, attacking the rook and the bishop. That's not easy to solve. My knight is well protected by my light squared bishop on s6. What is white going to do here? Let's see. Okay. Oh, knight cb5. Can I take the rook on c1 or the bishop, which is hanging? The problem is if I take the dark squared bishop, white has this in between move, knight c7 check. So let me just take the rook. Yep. If rook takes, I'll take with my other rook. So once again, this is called the O'Sullivan Gambit, you guys. Okay, so bishop takes. I think I have plenty of moves here. Pawn to e5 is one of them, but can I go bishop c5, pinning the knight? I think bishop c5 makes no sense. e5. Bishop c5 will come later. By the way, pawn to e5 instantly wins one of the knights. Why did I even want to play bishop c5? Why am I this bad at chess? Oh, knight takes a7. Did I make something wrong there? Maybe. Oh, okay, so the knight is attacking my rook, but that's the importance of knowing in between moves. I can play e takes d4, okay? The game is right here. So e takes d4 is an in-between move. That will come with a check. So white won't have time to capture my rook first. They have to attend to this check. Yeah, so king takes. Now I can rescue my rook, because the game has now shifted to the queen side, okay? This square right here. So, oh, wait a second, you guys. I have bishop c5 check, winning the knight on s7. I think white should resign now. Oh, my opponent is a diehard for nothing. Let me just take this knight. And next, I have plenty of moves. I'm planning to go pawn to f6, bishop b7 check, and maybe rook c6 will be checkmate. I don't know. So let's go f6. Yep, f6. If rook e1 check, I can go king d8 or probably go home. King d8 I think is better than going home. If bishop e7 check, I have king c7 and king b7 maybe. Oh, king b8, not king b7. Yeah. If bishop e7 check, I have king c7 and king b8. What is that? Anyways, check. Bishop b7 check. I think that'll be checkmate after king d6 and bishop b8 checkmate, okay? Cause all these highlighted squares in red are covered by my pieces, so bishop b8 will be checkmate. Yeah, he better resign. So my opponent just resigned, you guys, and I'm happy with the result. Oh wait, what? This was a rated match? No, this is not fair, you guys. I normally play casual games just for entertainment purposes and whenever I'm teaching my students. And that's all for today, you guys. Let me know which episode you liked the most in the comment section down below. And if at all you would love to see more of these kinds of content where I compile my favorite videos in one collection, of course, to make it easier for you guys, let me know. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, bye bye.